Wicked for Good was nearly a very different movie with a much darker, scary ending and deleted scenes including a scandalacious kiss between Glinda and Fiyero, a swankified version of For Good, plus Glinda's personal train launch. Yippee-ki-yay movie lovers, these are the Wicked for Good deleted scenes and alternate ending you never got to see. Fans of Glinda's fabulous fashion will have been gutted when a scene of the popular girl wearing a spectacular pink outfit that was teased in many of the trailers and promo material didn't make it into the final film. Although we get a few shots of Glinda's pink train in the movie, originally there was also a scene of the launch event for the new locomotive, which appears to have replaced the emerald-coloured one from the first film. In the cut scene, Glinda poses for the photographers, and there's a group of pink-clad young girls, scouts perhaps, singing in her honour. Their outfits aren't exactly the same, but they have more than a passing resemblance to the Lullaby League singers and ballerinas from the classic Wizard of Oz movie, so I think this was a homage to them. The Lullaby League pop up in the song Ding Dong the Witch is Dead, and they sing a little ditty to welcome Dorothy to Munchkin Land. It's quite surprising the scene was cut, as there was even a poster released of Glinda in this outfit, which shows more details including the skirt having traces of green mixed with the pink, hinting at Elphaba's influence on her friend. It seems like the cutscene would have come around the beginning of the film as our first introduction to what Glinda's up to, creating a nice comparison to Elfie, who's busy beating up guards on the yellow brick road and liberating enslaved animals. Although it would have been a fun scene, it was probably cut for pacing purposes. Plus, Glinda having her own train might have felt at odds with Madame Morrible giving her her own private bubble to travel around Oz. A lot of work obviously went into the scene and designing Glinda's dress, and there's even official merch of the young girl's pink satchels. Fans of the Broadway musical always knew Fiyero was going to end up with Elphaba, but Wicked for Good made his leaving of Glinda for her best friend sting even more. The movie sets up a grand wedding scene, and just when Glinda's about to tie the knot with Fiyero, the moment's wrecked by a stampede of animals. On top of this devastation, there was a scene deleted of Fiyero kissing Glinda passionately, which would have made his betrayal hit even harder. Dana Fox, who co-wrote the screenplay, describes the cut scene as romantic and beautiful, but a little too passionate. Fox said that seeing the kiss scene made it too hard to watch Fiyero make the choice to be with Elphaba, and to make it okay that Elphaba ran off with him. It was too real that he and Glinda were actually feeling something together, and the moment implied that he really did love Glinda. Fox elaborated that if the scene had been included, our brains would have exploded when he didn't choose Glinda in the end, and then we'd hate Elphaba, Glinda and Fiyero. Now, the ending of Wicked was always going to be bittersweet, with Elfie faking her own death and going into exile, leaving Glinda alone. But the original ending director Jon M had planned for us was going to be much darker and scarier for our Wicked Witch Elphaba and Scarecrow Fiyero, as they fled further into the sandy wilderness. In Frank L. Baum's novels, the land of Oz is surrounded on all sides by barren deserts with lethal sounding names. In fact, in the first Wicked movie, Elfie discovers a map in Dr. Dillerman's room, which shows an escape tunnel route that the animals are planning to use that goes beyond Oz and ends up in the impassable desert, presumably where Elfie and Fiyero end up at the end of the sequel. In Baum's books, all the deserts are described as being incredibly dangerous and impossible to cross and survive. And in the Return to Oz movie, stepping into the desert is lethal, and wheelers who fall in die and turn to sand. However, as Wicked for Good developed, Chu decided he wanted to see the desert less as a dead space and more as a possibility, adding in an interview that no one has explored that horizon because everyone's too scared. It appears that although initially the plan was for the film to end on a sense of foreboding where we might wonder whether Elfie and Fiyero will survive, when Chu decided to go more optimistic, he made the desert location more hopeful by placing sparkles in the sand, which, given the overall tone of the ending, does leave the movie on a much more optimistic note. And I dive deep into that upbeat ending, including the exact meaning of the Grimmery opening for Glinda in my Ending Explained video. In another change to the ending, the original version of the final song, For Good, was very different and overly swankified. Initially, while Elfie and Glinda sang the duet, we would have seen grand, sweeping shots of Oz. At a BFI event, Jon M explained, "The song is the end of the whole saga. You've got to go big. We've got the cranes out there, the studio wanted all these big sweeping shots across the whole set, and then move into them singing. We had that cut with with all the big shots for 7 months, but it never sat right. Eventually, Chu realised that he needed to let Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande's performances drive the feeling of the song, rather than have the spectacular cinematography do that, and so it became a much more intimate scene with the pair singing to each other. In the sequel trailer, there's a clip which didn't make it into the final movie, where Glinda panics about a plan.
Here's the plan. I have no plan.
Well, I do.
Oh, thank God.
From Glinda's dress and the stairs behind her, it looks like this moment was originally from around the time of the Wonderful song, when Glinda and Elphie use her broomstick and ropes to form a makeshift swing. It's around then that Glinda asks Elphaba to join with her, so it seems like Glinda's hope for a plan is connected to that. And Elphie's plan could be the proposal she ends up making to the wizard to stop his persecution of the animals and set the winged monkeys free. The lines were probably cut for pacing, given they likely take place in the middle of the song. Glinda's sycophantic sidekicks Pfannee and Shen make a brief appearance very early in the movie, accompanying Glinda, later at the wedding, and once again for a few seconds as onlookers to the witch hunters. However, according to Bowen Yang in the sequel, his character was going to get, quote, his just desserts. So, did he suffer some kind of horrible fate off-screen in a deleted scene? Remember, in the first film, Pfannee was mean and snide to Elphaba.
Bye, Elphaba. Love you from the shoulder pad.
Just a joy.
Good, joyful.
Now, I can't take credit for this, but following Yang's comments, I came across a brilliant fan theory that Glinda's obsequious assistants would get turned into the enchanted talking trees from The Wizard of Oz.
Are you hitting my apples on what they ought to be?
As the theory states, the apple trees in Oz are rude, vain, and territorial, traits that match Pfannee and Shen perfectly. It'd be poetic justice for them to be rooted in place, throwing literal shade, unable to be part of the social scene they once ruled. It also fits the wicked theme of transformation, karmic justice, and Oz's dark magic. Of course, it is possible that Yang was just teasing fans, and his just desserts remark simply relates to the pastries delivered to Glinda at the beginning that he decides to keep for himself.
We need a pastry! We need a pastry!
It's well known that Act 2 of the Broadway musical isn't generally as well regarded as Act 1, especially as the best known songs are all in the first half, which is perhaps why in the original version of Wicked for Good, the movie opened with a replay of Wicked's most iconic song, Defying Gravity. In fact, confirming this, just weeks before the film's release, Entertainment Weekly saw a cut of the film's first few minutes that spoon-fed the audience far more than the final version. Chu basically thought that viewers might need some kind of recap of the significant events of the first movie. In an interview with EW, the director said that when initially planning these two movies, you don't know how people are going to take it. They're going to want the fun and the dance in movie 2, so we've got to make sure it's light and bubbly. It seems though that perhaps after some test screenings, Chu realised he didn't have to convince anyone of anything. The audience believed our world, they believed in Elphaba. Clearly, Wicked for Good has some much darker elements than the first film, though I'd say the sequel ends on a much more optimistic note than the Broadway musical, as the grimoire opens mysteriously to Glinda. If you'd like to discover why this means Glinda is now magical and that Elphie's showing her a secret spell, tap here for my video revealing everything you might have missed in the ending of Wicked for Good. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers! See you next time!